Good afternoon, good evening, or morning, wherever we are all around the globe. Um, I'm welcoming you all to the Blow Council. It's a channel that we are going to be discussing various issues, especially around current affairs, business, entrepreneurship, personal development, self improvement, basically anything that is going to take us from point A to point B, anything that's going to make us get better, get wiser, and get stronger. Um, Today, I have Aliyu. Aliyu Dangote is my friend. We're going to be having a conversation around some of the recent occurrences as regards military coups and takeovers across the continent of Africa, mostly West Africa. Uh, and ideally, we're going to be looking into a few things. I know most of us would have heard a lot of stories around what's been going on here and there, but we want to shed a holistic view, point view around the situation to help us look around and see how this may play out or that may play out from a more balanced point of view. We'll be looking at the situations, from a northerner's perspective, and I think Aliu is in the best position to give us a perspective around, the cultural mix, ethnical mix, and the religious mix between, for instance, a country like Niger, where a coup just happened, and Nigeria, because we are bordered. I think on Sokoto, Yobe, and some other states like that border Niger. We also want to look at some of the reasons why these coups are even happening in Africa itself. Look at some of the previous coups that have happened in the past and how it relates to what is happening currently at the moment. We also want to look at democracy and how democracy itself plays a role, in the types of coups that are happening across the continent and in West Africa. We would also look at things like benefits of a takeover, if there's a benefit to a military takeover or not. Is dictatorship even good? We'll look at that. And we would also look at it from the angle of ECOWAS, United Nations, African Union, to give it a more global view and try to postulate some of the global interests that may be playing in some of these occurrences that are happening on the continent of Africa. So I would like to, usher Aliyu in. I don't know if Aliyu has a few initial comments for us before we get into the discussion today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Babatunde. It's nice to be here. I don't have much comments much to say, but we can begin.
Okay, makes sense. How are you? First of all, the tribunal of I don't even know what to call it, but everybody knows what I say when I say tribunal, I guess. How what's your take? Before we go into our main conversation, because that's what everybody's talking about since yesterday. What do you think about the judgment? Do you think it's a fair judgment? We don't want to get too much into politics, but just a little bit.
Well, when you put it like that, tribunal is something that has been trending online in Nigeria right now. So I think everybody understands what you are talking about. Well, for me, I think it's like any other election that has just happened. It has happened in the past, and it will continue to happen in the future. After every major election, there is always going to be a challenge from the opposition in Nigeria, and it's going to continue for the next few probably months or maybe years to close to the next round of election again before it continues again. It's a roller coaster. Anyways, something that is not new to Nigeria. Probably it might be new to a group of people nowadays because of the whole exposure through social media. But if you look at the past history of Nigeria, you would know that these things have happened in the past. So but I think for me, it depends on the perspective you're looking at it from. If you're looking at it from a perspective of the APC, you might think it might be fair. If you're looking at it from a perspective from other parties like PDP or LP, you might think it might be harsh. But well, I'm yet to see any major election like the presidential election that has been overruled by any tribunal. Probably maybe once that's happened, but maybe during the Awolowo time, which I'm not really sure. But not Awolowo, I think MKO Abiola's time. But I sorry.
So that was an annulment. They annulled the election.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was like an annulment. So, but and then the military came over to they took over the whole thing. So we don't know what is going to happen. But I think people should just brace themselves for. I think there's going to be maybe Supreme Court left to go to, but I think we should just accept the fact that we're going to have Tinubu for the next few years. I think the quicker we do, the better for us to move on as Nigerians, because there are a lot of challenges that we are already facing in the country, and I think having to go back all over again through election and the whole political system is just going to delay the whole process of us moving forward as a nation. I know a lot of people see Nigeria like a country that is not moving forward, but in its own speed, it's moving gradually, not as fast as we all expect, but eventually we'll get there.
Yes, I agree with you. Absolutely. Well, tribunal is tribunal for me. I think it's time for everybody to come together and work together as a nation, and let's move the country forward. I watched a little bit of President Tinubu yesterday when he was celebrating his tribunal victory in India, and he said, it's time for all of us to come together and pull Nigeria together out of the misery. So I can imagine 200 million people pulling a rope together. That must be a big pull. Well, today let's just dive deep into it straight up. The coup doesn't need much introduction. What has been happening doesn't need more introduction to you. We've had conversations around it. On the low when it recently happened. But for those that may not have too much understanding of what exactly has happened with the coups, there's been a series of coups in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. I believe there was coup in Sudan, although I believe Sudan is not part of West Africa, but there was coup in Sudan, there was coup in Guinea also. So this has been happening. The military basically just goes in there, take over power from the sitting administration, and they dissolve the administration, dissolve the government, and start their own government, and try to change things, turn things around for whatever reason. The reasons they usually give is if it's not corruption, it is something maybe some fundamentalist beliefs that could be it's French people, it's colonialism, so these types of things happen here and there. They take over. ECOWAS gave an ultimatum to switch back into democratic government, and this has been going on over the past 2-3 years. Recently, over the past few weeks, the same thing happened in Niger, and Niger is very close to, is a border country to Nigeria, and as Nigerians that we are, there's no way it doesn't affect us. Only if we want to play games with ourselves. So this is what has happened. The military junta went into the presidential guard detained President Bazoum, the Niger president, and his family and some of his cabinet members. And now they demand that they want to run the government for some time. And ECOWAS, headed by the president of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has said, no, we don't want dictatorship, we don't want military regime, we don't want coups in Africa, and this is how it's supposed to be. So Aliu, looking at it from a northerner's perspective, because a lot of people don't realize the closeness between Niger and Nigeria in terms of cultural, religious, ethnic, intermarriage, so many things. So please give us a deeper dive into the relationship between Nigerians and Nigerians.
Okay, once again, thank you very much, Babatunde. Well, generally Africa, I think Africa is a very interesting continent. There are a lot of people that have same beliefs and tribes and maybe some other things they believe in all together. Starting from Senegal, there are a lot of people, there are different tribes that are cut across different regions in Africa. The Senegal, they have their own aspect of the Fulanis, all the way to Nigeria, to some parts of northeast Nigeria too. So that is a wide range of group of people that are cut across. If looking at the map of Africa, if you can see where that's the whole length of the West African country, West African region, basically, as it looks like. So aside from that, there are different tribes, and there is the Hausa tribe, and there are other different tribes, minority tribes too. There are major tribes too as well. So if you look at it, when you talk about Niger, for instance, Niger and Nigeria, northern part of Nigeria, they speak similar languages, or they speak Hausa basically, and they dress the same. Actually, for you, sometimes for people that are not from that region, it's going to be quite difficult for you to separate to differentiate rather these two categories of people, because they dress in the same way, they speak similar languages. I think they are only separated by dialects. The Hausa in Niger might be a bit different from the one you have in the West, not west of Africa, not west of Nigeria rather. So it's something that is quite interesting, and there's been trade between these two parts of Africa for a very long time. Probably they are the same set of people. Nigeria, when you look at Africa generally, it's just that Africa has boundaries, which was drawn by mostly the French and the British Empire during maybe the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, and it's kind of separated people of the same tribe and religion, to different countries. Probably maybe Niger might be speaking French, and another part of Nigeria, and Nigerians might be speaking English. So, but if you remove all the aspects, the same group of people, and coups in Africa are not new to Africa. A lot of people might think, this is something new, but coups have happened even in Nigeria a lot of times, and it's good, and we cannot predict how often it will happen in the future. because it looks like Africa of the early 19th century is still similar, in terms of a lot of things to current African nations. There has been progress in the past, but still there's still some beliefs of lack of progress, which often encourages, and lack of, I think there's how do I put this? There's still lack of. Africa is a funny place. There's still exposure, and there is still like a lack of exposure again in some other.
Yes.
In a word to put it, yeah. In some other words, like if you look at Africa, generally there are people that have traveled out, they're exposed, and there's a lot number of people too they've not traveled out, and they still hold on to the old ideologies. So, but basically, if you look at Africa, even Mali, Senegal, I've seen somebody from Senegal speaking Fulfulde, just different dialects, and they speak the same Fulfulde with someone in Adamawa State. Adamawa State is a state in Nigeria, the same side of people, the same tribe, the same dressing. So it's quite funny, when you look at Nigeria, when you look at Africa or West Africa in that aspect.
Sorry. Funny enough, I was going to ask you, do you even know people that, when you talk about dialects, do you even know people that maybe are married to somebody that is Niger, or maybe somebody that has, maybe he has two wives. One wife is from Niger, one wife is from Nigeria. Do you know people like that?
Well, we don't. I think when in Nigeria, if you trace your lineage as a person, often the case, especially in some from us that are from Kano State, a lot of people actually came from their origin is from Ghana. I still have family members that are originally from Ghana, and they still have a village there in Ghana, So, and you meet people that say marry from Mali and Niger. Of course, Niger and Nigeria, they're from Sokoto. I don't know if people know Udut, which is the University of Sokoto. You can literally throw a stone and you can throw it into Niger. You can take people there see themselves so often, It's like there's no border.
Sorry? They're one family already.
Yeah, exactly. So the border is just the one that we have in the map. According to them, or from their own view, it's just one group of people, just villages here and there, and they don't even know there's a border, to be honest. So yeah, so that's how it is around that side. Yeah.
So I would imagine that you would, from your own point of view, you would probably say, if ECOWAS is going to take military into Niger, then they shouldn't do that. They should think about it twice, Abi.
It's interesting that Nigeria or ECOWAS wants to go into Niger, and when you look at the majority of the Nigerian military too, a lot of them are from the northern side of Nigeria, and for them, you have to give them, from a political point of view, there's a reason why Nigeria or ECOWAS, let me put it like this, ECOWAS wants to go into Niger. But then again, we're talking about ECOWAS here. The bulk of ECOWAS strength comes from Nigeria. And yes, so and when you look at it, there are a lot of people from the north which are which are going to be representing Nigeria when ECOWAS decides to invade or to go into Niger, to remove the military coup plotters. But some of these military people, when you talk to them, they often don't show much. They feel like they don't have a desire, or they don't really see a reason why they should be going into Niger. They've not been convinced why they should be going into Niger. After all, they've always seen Niger as just one group of people with them. So having to ask them, it's just like having to ask a group of people in in Kano to go and invade the people in Katsina. You know, they start to ask themselves a question like, why are we going to invade this group of people? After all, we have the same ideology, we have the same religion, we speak the same language.
We
You
do
know,
Ramadan. We do Ramadan at the
sorry,
same. I said we do Ramadan at the same time.
exactly. You know, so you know, in the Nigerian military ranks, it's quite difficult to convince this set of people. Even, you know, that was why I think when ECOWAS or the president decided to he wants to push the Nigerian army, you know, to convince the governors and the Senate to agree to the invasion of or rather to the military action for Nigerian military to act on the coup plotters in Niger. There was a lot of pushback from especially the northern leaders. You know, this is the same reason why, you know, you have this pushes, because they're the same group of people. Funny enough, you know, it's funny. I just found out where Nigeria actually got the word jollof. I don't even know if Nigerians are aware where jollof came from.
Looks like it comes from maybe Sierra Leone or one of those places.
I think it came from it's an empire, Jollof Empire in Senegal.
Senegal.
Yeah, just to show you, you know, West Africa, they are the same group of people that just moved across years. If not for the borders that are drawn out by the English and the French, we are still the same group of people anyways living together. So you can understand, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and you've shed a lot of light on that, because initially when the coup broke out, I personally, was we had a different type of opinion. But when I heard you speak about it and then got that perspective, I think it breeds the idea that there should be more dialogue. There should be more, more conversations around how to resolve the issues and all that. But I want to take us somewhere else a little bit. And these are like, looking at from the angle of coups generally that have happened in Africa. I don't know if, a lot of, some of us may know, some of us may not know, but there was a bunch of coups that happened in the 60s. Which Nigeria wasn't an exception. And I particularly had watched an interview with Yakubu Gowon, who was the one that took over. And he was at that time the head of the government, the head of the military government that came into power after the 1966 coup. And from his own recounts, from his own conversation, Nigeria on a ship then, probably went for like a training or something like that in the UK, and with a bunch of other military people going down to Africa. They would drop some of them in other countries, and then they would drop him in Nigeria and all that stuff. So he said while they were on the ship that they heard news that there was coups already happening in some neighboring countries, and people were debating it on the ship that can that happen in Nigeria, can that happen? And he was thinking, what's going on, that can this type of thing happen in Nigeria too? Coincidentally, the day he landed into Nigeria was, I think it was that day or the day before that the coup happened. Coincidentally also, after that coup, it was the same coup that he did not know anything about that brought him into power. There's some people that say, oh, maybe he knew about the coup, that's why he was coming to. Who knows? Let's not go into that area. But and then we have now things that are happening as regards, the coup in our region, which it seems like there's a fundamentalist, this revolution around. We don't want French colonialism anymore, and the tightening of the resources that belongs to these countries by the French. And there's so many stories. I'm not from that region. I'm from West Africa, but I'm Nigerian, so I don't even speak French. But these are these things that we've heard all around. But from an angle, can it even be possible that because now we're talking about Niger. Gabon has happened after Niger. We didn't even go there, but Gabon has actually happened again. Who knows? So, are we looking at a situation where there's going to be multiple coups happening still? Because I, for one, predicted that there will be more coups after Niger. Because but what do I'm curious to know what you think, as looking at it from that angle.
Yeah, I think from offline we had this conversation where I told you there was going to be more coups, but it's not going to. The coups that are happening right now are totally different from the coups that happened during the earlier regimes in Nigeria. Nigeria was just Africa generally was young then, and was still trying to find its rhythm. For a lot of countries like Ghana, Nigeria, which are mostly the Anglophone countries, their coups were different from the current ones happening right now. The current coups happening right now, it's still due to the link the French has with some of its former places that they ruled in the past. And if you look at it, majority of the coups that are happening are not from, we are still yet to hear. We don't know what might happen in the future, but we're still yet to hear any Anglophone country having a coup. Majority of the coups that we're having now, which are like Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, even Gabon. It's if you look at it, they have like a link which has to do with the French, and probably if you look at the government, the way they are being the way it's being run, it's still connected to the French. And I think often the case, it's like after majority of the Western power left Africa, the French were the only I think the Western body that have not completely the links with their African colonial regions, which I think right now, some of the people are kind of tired of the way their countries are being run to the advantage of some other countries. So I think if you look at it, there is a relationship from those francophone countries where they're having coups compared to so it's going to be difficult for you to hear a coup right now from any Anglophone country, because majority of them are being run by their own independent beliefs. And if you look at it, most of these francophone countries, their system of government will encourage coups, because some of them they are still being run by either families that have been there. If you look at the Gabon coup, for instance, the family has been there since 1943 or so. The father started. Sorry?
I said 55 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's passed to the son, and they don't have a specific tenure, like unlike Nigeria, after 8 years, you can't come back to rule again. While in those regions, their system still allows them, as long as they benefit, the system benefits whoever that is benefiting from, you can stay there as long as you want, which you can't rule a group of people for that long and they will just accept you for that long. They have most of the coups, they have their reasons for doing the coups. I'm not encouraging coup plotters. They could have been probably maybe another way they could have done this, to I'm always of the opinion of there should be dialogue and a less violent way to do things. But people will most likely act on the best manner in which they want to. They feel it's easier for them to approach things. So if you look at it, Gabon is one example. Niger probably the civil rule has not really benefited the people all along. They feel like they have a lot of resources which they don't benefit from. They feel like there's a lot of international organizations, especially from one region, which is the French. They feel like a lot of these companies are benefiting more than the people from Niger. It's similar all across the Francophone countries, having to have their own monetary system synchronized with the French. They still have a lot of link with the French, which doesn't really benefit some of these countries. And I can see a reason why there is a lot of coups along the French former colonial regions.
Yeah, I do. It's again, spot on. There's no, there's I think that's the truth of what is really going on. And I've heard some people who say, "Oh, that my own truths, your own truths, our own truth." The reality is that there's only one truth. Every other thing is always just an opinion of somebody thinking that it is their own truth. But yeah, thank you for that, Aliu. On the other angle, I think because you mentioned a little bit on democracy, and I was thinking to myself that people talk about democracy. Now military coup is going on in some places. They call it dictatorship. We've seen situations where even the dictatorship delivered more benefits to the people than the democracy. And we've seen situations where the democracy did better. We've also seen situations where dictatorship, just made a mess of everything. And more importantly, because of our own experience in Nigeria, for example, because some people, well, maybe a little bit younger, and they didn't really understand what happened during the military regime in Nigeria. I remember for me, I was in primary school when before I was born into General Babangida's era. So and a few of us kind of idealized. Maybe idealized, maybe a too deep a word, but we revered the general, right? Because these were the people that were making things happen at that time and all that. So ideally, the reality about the whole idea of whether democracy is better or whether dictatorship is better, I think it still depends on the individual, the person that is actually in charge and the person that has power and all that. So, and then people go around talking about, oh, it's military, it's not military, and all that. Whether they should go, if they go in with military intervention, that's it's very, they shouldn't set up military around the borders of Niger, that they shouldn't threaten the country and the people. I think that was what kind of like brought the arousal of, oh, why is ECOWAS doing this? Why is President Tinubu doing that? Or why are they pushing the military? But my own point of view as regards that is that there's a language the military understands. And it's not just in the military, right? For those of us that are in business too and all that, if you're going to demand for something, you don't just go and demand with just words sometimes. Especially when you're dealing with military people who they are used to war, they are used to action and all that. So while you're dialoguing with them, you also need to show them your capacity. You also need to show them that you're ready. And I think people didn't really understand that, these were the things that made them to come to table quickly. People thought maybe, I don't know, maybe it was some magic that made the military to come to the table. But no, it is the fact that they could see that there was military action going on the below that was, getting ready to come and do justice in their country. But Ali, do you think there's even benefits to military takeover? Do you think it has any benefit itself?
In the past, we've not seen any evidence of that. In the past, we've not seen any military coup that has come, or a body that have come and then transformed any country in Africa to greater heights. Uh, and I think it's these military coups, they have their timeline, because often if there's a coup in a country, it only takes time. If you become too comfortable as a military leader of a country, it only encourages more coups, and it only sets the country backwards. If you look at it in all the African countries in the past, of what has happened, even in Nigeria, when we had coups and they kept promising they were going to transition into into civilian rule. After some years, they keep pushing it, and they keep pushing the date, and eventually pressure mounts on the military body, as well as as well as also people become more agitated, waiting, because people get tired of the military regimes after some few years. When there's a coup, people have this belief, there's going to be like a sudden change of system, and everything's going to transition into, it's going to just run smoothly over a short period of time. But reality is, you are a businessman, Babatunde, and you know that nothing transitions easily. It's not as easy as everybody thinks. Having to run a country is not a piece of cake.
It's the biggest job. It's the biggest job.
Exactly. So when these military bodies come into power, they don't often think of it in that aspect. They think it's just going to be something that they just order people around and things get done. But they end up being more corrupt, because of course it's a system, and the system, it's not properly implemented, and they can't implement it because they have no much experience on running a system in terms of a business-wise kind of system. I'm sure they know how to run an organized military system, but having to run a country is totally different from that. And after some years, they just find out that it's more complicated than they think. And some of their colleagues, some of their junior officers believe that, the military senior officers have turned out to be like the former civilian rulers who have done coup for the civilian guys, and they just decide, these guys are not worth it, and let's just do a counter coup for them, and it all turns into like a roller coaster. It just keeps happening, and eventually it loses a lot of discipline within the ranks of the military. Everybody that can control any specific large amount of group of people can decide, I can just decide to go and do a coup. After all, I have some military people backing me here and there, and I can do a coup myself. But eventually they get tired of it, and they end up transitioning into, which has showed in Africa. Eventually that's what happens. The military get tired of having coups and counter coups, and they end up transitioning into civil. They transition into giving it to civilian rulers to continue. So, but I think for most of these countries that are having coup right now, I think they might go through this process, but it depends on who is doing the coup, because it's possible the person doing the coup might transition according to the promised date. He might transition quickly, and we will see what happens, because transitioning into civilian role, does that mean you leave the system? Because that's another question entirely. You that you have the power to.
He's going to go and change to civilian. He's going to just...
so you are going to be like, it's going to be a case of the big brother gives the younger brother to go and rule, and I'll be watching you. Exactly. Can you retire the person that just handed over the government to you? So there's a lot of complications to that too. There's a lot of complications, but we are waiting to see what happens. But we just hope that the history doesn't repeat itself, and most of these countries don't find themselves not growing over these few years because of the confusion that is happening there.
I agree, Ali. I agree with you 100%. And even from the angle you mentioned something around more like capacity. They think that it's easy to run the country. They just go take over power, then they see that, oh, this thing is not as delicious as it looks from the outside. And that's where the issue of capacity comes in. And I'm going to, we've seen, and I won't want to go into details of any or mention any names, but we've seen elections where people are campaigning based on the capacity to rule. And there's a difference between your capacity to rule and being a businessman. There's a difference between leadership and being a manager. There's so much difference in these two. And I always say that there's a book I can't remember the name of the author now. I think it's Jim Collins, Good to Great. How good companies become great companies. And there's 5 levels of leadership that was mentioned in 5 levels of leaders that was mentioned in that book. And most people get to level 4 of leadership, where you're a good leader, you're meeting your KPIs, you're doing your thing, you have a hold on your human, But the level 5 leaders, what differentiates the top level leaders from the level 4 leaders is the ability to have a successor when you're leaving. The ability for you to install a successor is what makes you the highest level, because whatever it is that you spent, whether it is 8 years, whether it is 12 years, whether it is 4 years to build, there must be continuity. We see that in places like Lagos. They are talking about they commissioned the blue rail line today. Did they think that it was it started from somewhere? I think it was from Jack Conde's time that they had that plan. So this is very important in governance. It's very, and I just wanted to push that out there. For because of time, Ali, we would just get into a few conversations to wrap it up. But before we wrap it up, I wanted us to look from the global context too. Because again, when I believe that everything affects everything. Nothing happens in isolation, even if we don't know what the correlations are, but everything affects everything, and that's the way the world was designed, in my view. We've seen people say African Union is a toothless bulldog. African Union is just like it's just a name. ECOWAS also, we've seen where they've said, oh, ECOWAS is they don't have any strength. They're just the ECOWAS body. They've not been able to achieve anything. But President Tinubu came, and it seemed like there was a little bit of action. But I guess that is just the personality that President Tinubu embodies as a person. Whenever he goes into anything that he does, people feel that it's time for action when it comes around, and that is very important as a leader. So people have talked about that they don't have capacity, these unions. Then we have the United Nations, of course, which is also a giant on its own. Literally the world we live in today was a world designed by UN, the beautiful world we live in today. When you look at all this, and then there's the America, there's the Russia, there's the Ukraine, there's the war going on, there's the interests. A lot of people don't even know that, Russia-Ukraine war, there's an issue of gas supply into Europe from Russia. There could be alternatives for European countries to get gas. And Nigeria may, again, I'm not saying anything specific, but Nigeria may just be a good option for Europe to get gas, right? And coincidentally, the previous regime of President Muhammadu Buhari, they had started the process of facilitating this project of gas pipeline that is going from Warri in Nigeria down through Niger, and it's going to get to Algeria, where it's going to connect with another pipeline that would take gas into Europe. Some people would say, oh, Russia has plans to go into Niger, with all these things so that they can stop that pipeline project from working. Again, I'm just throwing out ideas, right? Everybody can make what they want to make out of it. So, looking at those types of context, and then the US is there, again, the pipeline could have been done years ago, a long time ago. But then, why is the West now interested in building that pipeline? So there's a lot of, based on all these things, the final thing is people want to achieve peace, people want to achieve prosperity, people want, they want a better world. Ali, where do you think, how can, from the global context, both macro and micro, how can we even get to achieve this peace that we're looking for? What are the things that you feel, this is what the big boys should be doing, the United Nations guys, the guys in the Security Council, the Russians, the United States, the United Kingdom, the China. This is what they should be doing, this is what ECOWAS should be doing. Then this is what the people should be doing. But how do you think we can achieve peace in this? Yes, and I'm talking in the context of Africa and West Africa.
Yeah, so I often in my conversations with people, I often tell them that as hard as it is to believe, the world is a big market, and I'm sure I've mentioned this to you, Babatunde, too, in our conversations. The world is a big market in the perspective, or in the sense that everybody is out there to get what benefits him. Nobody is there to. There is no consideration for whether, I'm doing this for the favor of, I just saw a group of people, I just feel like these guys should be better than I am. Let me just help them out, Yeah, and Africa has always been this. There has always been a country where a lot of people come with the ideology that, we're here to help the Africans. They are struggling, they need development, they are hungry. And the reality is that they are all coming to Africa for their own benefits. Everybody wants to benefit from, they might throw some group of or some things here and there to support one or two things to give back to the community. But often the case is not going to be to our full benefits. It might be they might be the ones benefiting 90%, who may end up benefiting 10% from their help, Yep. And I don't see Africa is going to be a place where the only time we'll have this peace we're talking about is by Africans realizing that, we need to help ourselves. Help will not come from the outside. Don't expect anybody to come from the West or from Russia to just help you. It's just as simple as that. Just like when you are trying to, when you have a land and somebody say, let me help you develop your land, let me build a big house for you. We all know that or a flat group of flats for you. At the end of the day, you might have only one flat out of 20 flats that might be built, Exactly, that's not actually helping you, considering you have the land, but he's helping himself more. So you
want to develop the house by yourself.
Sorry?
I said when the person doesn't want to develop their house by themselves.
Yes, exactly. So if you don't put enough effort to find your own capital, properly invest it in the wise way, you might find yourself having one flat instead of you find yourself owning a group of flats. So the case of whether there is a gas pipeline or the case of whether Russia is, there's a global struggle that is happening, from the eastern side and from the western side. And Africa always happens to find itself in the middle because we're always confused. We have failed to invest in the past years, decades, we failed to invest in our country. A lot of the African leaders often just have some people have the capital to make a difference, but often the case they would rather invest it somewhere else, and it hasn't really helped Africa in the past. And for younger businesses, for younger organizations, it's a struggle for them to grow within the system. Most of these gas pipelines across Africa, could benefit us, but it's all about benefit for who is benefiting. If you see somebody developing your gas pipeline, of course, someone is going to be benefiting from it, and you're going to have only little benefit from it. And if you see somebody telling you to take this action, as a country, take this action, of course, the action will benefit him more in comparison to what you might benefit from. So I believe, the only way Africa, AU, or the ECOWAS, or any African group is going to, be heard across Africa, is going to be respected over the years, is by them. When you leadership, or for you being leadership is not taken. People have to give you. People have to respect you. When you have to put the action on ground, people have to see. You have to lead by example. I think that's what I'm looking for. If the AU and ECOWAS over the years have shown that their capacity, their zeal to develop Africa as a country, to source for financing, to change infrastructure, so many other things that they can change, to grow Africa. Africa has a lot of resources, but till today, Africa as a country, we are just everybody was more or less like everybody just coming to peg on Africa, and as long as you can strike a good deal with any of the leaders, or anybody that is in a good strategic location, good position in the government, you can benefit from whatever, he personally, he will benefit without the regard of whether people in the community are benefiting. If you look at Africa in the past, right from slavery, Africa has always been the same, and it's still the same. There's very little or no change to that system. So I still believe we have a long way to go, but I think people have to change in the perspective. People have to change the narrative. Right now, Africa is being drained by intellectual draining. Aside from just resources, a lot of people are leaving Africa, and it's because
all the resources, human resource, mineral resource,
exactly.
Everything is going.
Everything is just being pegged on, and people. I always believe it's only the Africans that will change Africa. Nobody's going to come to change Africa, So the more people know this, the better for them, and also as well as the people are always the leaders. People always say, the leaders are terrible, the leaders are this and that. The thing is, I have seen people that were complaining about the leaders, and they will eventually become leaders, or they get the opportunity to become the head of units, and they become worse than the leaders they were complaining about. This idea that you brought up of a happy Africa, a safer Africa, that's when it's going to come. But as long as we're going to continue to go on this path, then we have our hands full.
I was going to specifically, wrap up this conversation with the people. I think for me, the message is always to the people, because the leadership comes from the people. The leadership is just a reflection of its people, and this is a natural fact, whether people want to take that or not. And I think the knowledge we need, there's a lot that needs to be learned, and what I mean learning is not necessarily like, we need to learn something foreign. If something foreign benefits us, why not? But even within us, within our context, within the African wealth of knowledge, there's a lot that we can make use of. There's so much, but then we want to wait, and there's a huge problem, because most of the knowledge that is available in books are all written in other languages: English, Spanish, French, and all these languages, majorly in English, because of course we are from an English-speaking country. So first of all, there was a research I did some time back, some years ago, and I think we found out that 50% of Nigerians can't even read or write. So when you cannot read and write, how do you even access information that is available? So there's a huge barrier already, you know. Like somebody said, he said words are a way to see, you know, that they did some experiments with prisoners and they found out that the lesser the vocabulary that they understood, the more it is possible for them to have tendencies to bad behavior. So, because when you don't know words, you don't understand the words, then you're limited in your comprehension. So, and I'm sure Ali, you might be able to testify to this, you know, situations where somebody tells you something and you be like, whoa, now I can see, you know, just because of the explanation and all that. So Ali, you know, on that note, you know, I would like to give our viewers our final word for the day today, which is, you know, that's for the people. We should all try to, you know, hopefully get to learn more. Let's try to absorb more information. You know, I know Ali know that I like the idea of absorbing a lot of information, because there's the popular saying where people say, oh, what you don't know is not going to kill you. We hear people say that a lot. What you don't know won't kill you. That's, people need to, you know, again, I think there needs to be a rewiring of some of the way we think, because what you don't know is the only thing that has the possibility to even kill you, because what you know will most likely not kill you. So it's important to know, and it's important for us to, you know, develop ourselves on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. So Ali, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and we will be talking about gas project another day. I know we talk about gas, but you know, there's so much to discuss on gas, and we would wrap it up from there. So thank you so much, and
thank you very much for having me too.